another interesting ASMR video, and today I'm gonna treat a very delicate subject. The United States, territories and freely associated states, but as an empire. Well, not an empire in the classical way of meaning, but the United States has often been characterized as having an empire-like influence, especially since the mid-20th century. This perception is based on factors such as economic dominance, military power, and political influence. American imperialism is the expansion of the American political, economic, and military influence beyond its boundaries. Well, the policies perpetuating American imperialism are usually considered to have begun in the late 19th century. The questions of whether United States should intervene in the affairs of foreign countries has been much debated. Despite periods of peaceful and coexistence, war with native old Americans resulted in substantial territory gains for the American colonists, who were expanding into native land. And this continued even after the independence and an ethnic cleansing campaign known as Indian removal gained for European American settlers more valuable territories. For example, the giant Louisiana Purchase. Louisiana Purchase was a peaceful, but the Mexican-American War from 1846 resulted in the annexation of 500,000 square miles of Mexican territory. Well, non-interventionism was wholly abandoned with the Spanish-American War. The United States acquired the remaining islands, colonies of Spain, with President Theodore Roosevelt defending the acquisition of Philippines. In the early 20th century, the US obtained Panama Canal Zone here and occupied Haiti and the Dominican Republic. In terms of territorial acquisitions, the United States has integrated with voting rights all of its acquisitions into the North American continent, including the non-contiguous Alaska. Hawaii also became an American possession, equally represented in the mainland, but other islands acquired during wartime wartime remained territories, for example, Puerto Rico, Guam, United States, Virgin Islands, Wake Islands, and Midway Atoll or Northern Mariana Islands, and the American Samoa. Well, the Cold War reoriented American foreign policy towards opposing the communism, and prevailing US foreign policy embraced its role as a nuclear armed global superpower. Through the Truman Doctrine and Reagan Doctrine, the US framed the mission as protecting free peoples against the undemocratic systems. Anti-Soviet foreign policy became cursive and covert. But what happens after the September 11 attacks in 2001? The question of imperialism were raised again in the United States, who invaded Afghanistan and overthrew the Taliban, and after that they would have Iraq. In 2003. Well, let's talk about some historical facts. Well, the United States have been characterized as having an empire-like influence, especially since mid-century. Well, let's talk about the military presence. The US military maintains bases and military installation in all its overseas territories, which some critics argue resembles imperial military outposts. Economic power. Well, the economic influence of the United States on a global scale, it's substantially American multinational corporation, financial institution, and the US dollar status as world's primary reserve currency contribute to these perceptions of economic imperialism. The soft power and culture. American culture, including its music, movies, and technology, has a significant global impact. So, soft culture, music, media, and technology. Political influences. The US has played a central role in international organizations and alliances. Its political influence is evident, and an institution like United Nations or World Bank and the International Monetary Fund, who has a very widespread influence over the other states' economy. There is a debate. The idea of an American empire, it's not universally accepted. Some argue that the term it's not accurate, that it oversimplifies the US foreign policy. Others believe that using the term empire may not fully capture the nature of American influence. Now, let's talk about the less known facts, and we start with territorial acquisitions. While the term empire is associated more with overseas colonies, the US itself expands significantly through territorial acquisitions. Like I said, in 1803, the Louisiana Purchase. In 1845, Texas. And the Mexican War from 1846 to 48, Mexican War added vast territories to the main territory of United States. The US exerted substantial economic influence in Latin America, sometimes referred as the economic imperialism. This influence includes involvement in trade agreements, interventions in American economies, Latin American economies, Panama, Nicaragua, Dominican Republic, Costa Rica, and support for regimes aligned with the US interests. CIA interventions, that's the next less known fact. The Central Intelligence Agency has been involved in covert operations around the world, supporting or overthrowing governments based on perceived US interests. Examples include the overthrow of Iranian Prime Minister Muhammad Mossadegh in 1953 and the Chilean President Salvador Allende in 1973. Another less known fact is the militarization of space. The United States has been at the forefront of developing and deploying military assets in space. The militarization of space is a lesser known aspect of the American military strategy involving spy satellite systems for surveillance, communications, and reconnaissance. The proxy wars. The US has been involved in various proxy wars. Proxy wars. Especially during the Cold War era, supporting anti-communist forces in conflicts such as Vietnam, Korean War, and conflicts from Central America. Additionally, the US maintained military alliances such as NATO that contribute to its global military presence. The US dollar diplomacy. The US dollar plays a crucial role in global finance, and its use as a primary reserve currency gives the US significant economic leverage. This is sometimes referred as the dollar diplomacy. Non-colonial expansion. Unlike traditional empires that often establish colonies, the US has generally pursued a strategy of power projection without direct colonization. Instead, it has focused on maintaining military bases and economic influences on the foreign soils. Well, and because we are living in the 21st century, we need to mention the cyber warfare and espionage. The United States, like other major powers, engaged in cyber warfare and espionage. The development and deployment of cyber capabilities for intelligence, gathering, and offensive operations reflect the modern dimension of global influence. Now, let's talk about the United States foreign possessions and freely associated states. And we're gonna start with the Baker Island, which is here. Baker Island. Well, Baker Island is in Polynesia, North Pacific, claimed under the Guano Island Act in 1856. Annexed on May 13, 1936, it's under the jurisdictions of United States Department of the Interior. Howland Island, which is nearby. It was claimed under the Guano Island Act and annexed on 13 May 1936. Jarvis Island. Again, the same, annexed on May 1936. The Johnston Atoll. Last used by the US Department of Defense in 2004. A Kingman Reef. Claimed under the Guano Island Act on February 8, 1860. It was annexed on 10 May 1922. Midway Atoll. Territory since 1859. Primary and national wildlife refuge, and it's under the jurisdiction of Navy Department. Okay, the next is here on the other side, Palmyra Atoll, partially privately owned by the Nature Conservancy. And the Wake Island in Micronesia, its territory since 1898, and it's administered by the US Air Force. But these are freely associated states. But let's talk about the American territories. One of them is the American Samoa. Well, its territory since 1900. The Samoan Islands are divided in two regions, and the US took control of the eastern half of the islands. Guam. Its territory since 1899, US territory, acquired at the end of Spanish-American War. Guam, it's home to a naval base Guam and Anderson Air Force Base. Northern Mariana Islands. Well, was a Commonwealth since 1986. The Northern Mariana Islands, together with Guam, were part of the Spanish Empire until 1899, when the Mariana were sold to the German Empire. Beginning from 1919, they were administered by the Japan as a League of Nations. After the Second World War in 1947, they became part of the United States territory in the Pacific Islands, and they are administered by United States as UN trustee. Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico was unincorporated. It's an unincorporated territory since 1899. Was acquired at the end of the Spanish-American War and has been a US Commonwealth since 1952. Since 1917, Puerto Ricans have been granted US citizenship. US Virgin Islands. They were purchased by the United States from Denmark in 1917 and organized under the revised Organic Act of the Virgin Islands. In 1954, US citizenship was granted. The main islands are St. Thomas, St. John, and St. Croix. And this is the lesson for today. God bless America. Thank you very much for watching, and until next time, I wish you all the best. Bye bye.